Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. Alright, so this is going to be kind of a long episode. We have a bunch of new things coming back out, a bunch of new ongoings coming back from hiatus, and some tragic and some not so tragic news to get through. So let's start off with one of the fluff piece news topics. And what's more fluff than any news concerning the long gestating Flash movie? It's been years and years and with no actual momentum or progression, but we still seem to be getting info and tidbits about it. And since things just keep repeating themselves, the only news we've gotten this week about it is that seemingly WB is back on the idea that the Flash movie should be an adaptation of Flashpoint, to the extent that big rumors circulating around right now involve either bringing back Jeffrey Dean Morgan from Batman v Superman to portray Thomas Wayne Bat-Dad, or to court Michael Keaton to return in a similar role as an older alternate universe Bruce Wayne. And either possibility was met with ridiculous and insane cheers from internet crowds, which astounded and confused me, given that the most recent successes that individual comic hero movies have been for movies that were streamlined, simple, and character comic concept focused. You know, Aquaman, Shazam, Wonder Woman, and even Venom were all either financially, critically, or fan beloved precisely because they were so focused and airtight. So why do they think it's a good idea to ignore all of that progress and all the stuff that's been working for a Flash movie, and instead adapt a story that was only about 20% concerning the Flash to begin with? Even if this ever gets made, which it probably won't be because this is like the third time they've really tried to shove Flashpoint down the throats to the people making it, it'll be an incredible mess. And this could all be avoidable if they just pay attention to how much of a slam dunk a simple rogues heist movie plot would be. You didn't need to add Quisp or whatever to Aquaman when you had Ocean Master and Black Manta, and the same principle should align with the Flash. Moving ahead, and just to pull the band-aid off, we've had more reveals and upheavals in the comic community, and how insular and ingrained the abuses, sexual and otherwise, perpetrated by writers and higher-ups have been over the past week. And it's deplorable, it really is. We've had some performative stances, including a really lacking social media oath that's been passed around by comic industry men, and one resignation, but no real firing, and not anything that's really been hinting at impactful and thorough change. And that's what people want and need right now, because from an outside perspective it looks like a dumpster fire, and it probably always was. There are some incredibly horrifying and just nauseating stories being uncovered and just being admitted right now, and one just happened to break as I'm recording this right now. This is just so completely horrifying and makes me sick to my stomach, like increasing rapidity. Like I mentioned last week, it seemed like every other month there was something new coming about, and now it's every day. It's been non-stop. It's been a gigantic flood and deluge, and there's something really wrong about the industry if that's the case here. We need to really take that seriously. Please protect and listen to the people who are going forward with this, who are coming forward with their own tales of trauma, because it's such a scary position to be in. And lastly, I want to give some tribute to the passing of the late, great Joel Schumacher, who died this past week, and who is going to be missed. Of course, he became a staple of comic movies for his unforgettable Batman duology, and that's kind of what I want to focus on. His filmography and impact on cinema will be lauded for ages to come, but I do want to give Batman Forever the props it deserves. It was something that did get brushed under the rug this week, almost like a dirty secret that was best forgotten. A lot of unfavorable comparisons and snide remarks like, why do we need to bring this up? Why don't we just remember him for falling down instead? And you know why? Because it's a movie worth remembering. It has great performances, fantastic art design and art direction, and an engaging, if silly and really goofy, storyline. It's one of those movies that makes the phrase "not afraid to be a comic movie" something less said by weirdos trying to downplay flaws, and more of an actual fact. Kilmer, Carey, and Jones are powerhouses, and the almost insanely surreal environment of Gotham envelops and disorients in a wonderfully madcap way. And even though I detest the follow-up, Schumacher shows incredible style and confidence in this outing, and that future comic films really do owe a debt to. Rest in peace, Mr. Schumacher. You will be missed. Here's for a moment of silence to you as well. Moving ahead to what I read this week, first off we have Hellblazer number 7. This issue was preempted by a warning from Spurrier on his Twitter that the ending was not for the faint of heart and had one of his most nasty twists ever. And when Spurrier says that kind of thing, you better damn well be sure that he means it. And goddamn did that warning live up to the hype. While last month's issue was a grippingly eerie, macabre, almost gothic ghost story, this issue is just chilling. It's a tense, anger-inducing, tragic look at abuse, power, jealousy, and insecurity. Spurrier takes the common tropes of the siren of the sea and flips them on their head in the most bitter and exacting of fashions. From the start of the issue, the reader is drawn into a web of dread that never lets up and only increases page by page and panel for panel, all leading into a maddeningly suspenseful climax that can only end in horror and trauma. Getting to the final page was a journey of the senses for sure. It makes a strong case for this run to have the chops at being one of Hellblader's future iconic runs, because even as the noose of fear tightens around the plot and the reader, Spurrier is able to drop in further caustic and cynical wit throughout it, nailing Constantine's dry, if subdued, anger and contempt at those who are perpetrating this kind of injustice, while also underlining a righteous humanity in those affected. It's a wonderful, full issue, and even then it's just part one of a two-parter. Spurrier has me hooked, lined, and sunk. I can't wait to see where this goes next, and if you pick up an issue of Hellblazer for the first time, you could very well pick up this one, because you won't regret it. It's just something that is going to leave a lasting, memorable pain in your heart. It is an amazing issue, and definitely Spurrier at the top of his game. 2 thumbs up. Next up, we have Outer Darkness Chew number 3, which was an odd issue because as I was reading it, I was about to give it a lower grade than I thought. Then when I finished, I realized that would be unfair because I was going to grade it for being something it wasn't even trying to be. What I mean by that is that for a while now, this crossover has been touted as the final Chew story ever, like the nail in the coffin, the final word. But then it turns out that Layman changed his mind like midway through and that this was actually the last Outer Darkness story. So, whoop-de-doo, because this would not have been a good Chew story at all. The first 2 parts do a good job of setting the stage and reintroducing the characters that we know and love in ways that we know and love. But other than that, this one kind of almost completely neglects that in favor of a rushed and uninteresting, almost zombie-style plot where they're all infected and have to be killed off quickly and unsatisfyingly. So reading all that, I was supremely disappointed because I was promised something that would be the last word in where the series is going and in where these characters are coming from. But I can't say it's bad for that reason now, because with Outer Darkness now taking the forefront and this being the finale to that, then it doesn't matter that the Chew characters were neglected. Like, it wasn't really about them. It's not really something that is meant to highlight and spotlight them. Because if Layman is trying to expand the universe and so plans and goals might have shifted for this crossover, then I need to take that into account. But on the other hand, I don't know enough about Outer Darkness past the first arc to make any actual verdict about that angle to this crossover. Like, how does it stand as an Outer Darkness finale? All I can say is that outside of a few good gags and some funny and somber beats, it's mediocre and not that engaging. So overall, 2 thumbs middle. I hope that fans of Outer Darkness got something out of this crossover because I didn't as a Chew fan. So I have to say, bring on Chew, the upcoming spinoff about Tony's thief of his sister, and the hypothetical, still in the works, Chew 2. Next up, we have Green Lantern, the 80th anniversary special, which was an okay-ish special. Much like the recent ones DC has done, there's some good stories in this, some dull ones, and some interesting ones. The real standouts to me have to start with Denny O'Neil's final Green Lantern story, which has some great art from Mike Grell that is a tribute to the Green Lantern Green Arrow days, and is more of a thoughtful rumination about violence and imposition of power in comics. It's not a blockbuster or wow factor style story, but it's one that comes from the heart and is respectful of the era of GL that's trying to homage and trying to sort of bring forward for a new reader, or at least a modern reader. And it's a fitting bookend to this icon of a writer's career. The second one I'd like to talk about is Jeff Johns' return to one of his more notable characters. And much like his short for the Flash anniversary issue, it's kind of more focused on being a comedic tale that highlights one of the hallmarks he would play around with in his runs. This time, it's Hal's bold and forthright nature when faced with a problem. Like, he doesn't hesitate, even when he probably should think things out more clearly. So in that way, it's sweet and hilarious, and it shows that John still has the touch. It's something that I think really highlights what makes Hal such a adorable kind of protagonist. Of course, there's a lot of times when he can be kind of boneheaded, and that's something that I think a lot of Hal fans, especially from Johns' run, find really charming and really likable about him. And if Johns wants to come back and maybe write a Hal mini or maxi, or maybe Hal and Carol team up book, I'll be all for that. Alright, and so the last one I want to talk about is from Tinian and Gary Frank, mainly because it's such a huge ripoff of James Robinson's Earth 2. Yeah, I know, mainline Alan Scott is now bi, whatever. He seems like the kind of 30s guy who would be repressing that stuff, and it could be an engaging topic to handle in a future series. But what got me is that it's such a huge ripoff of what James Robinson was doing for Earth 2, down to his boyfriend dying in the train explosion. And like, I'd rather be reading a version of Earth 2 that DC didn't screw over than to see DC trying to port over stuff it did into the mainline series, because all it does remind me of that series that I really loved and really want to see explored, and now it's gone and they're just kind of grafting on pieces of its corpse onto the mainline canon, and I can see that happening, and it's such a tragic thing to do. I don't mind that balance cut. It's something I can see Alan really grappling with and having to deal with, and with Obsidian and Jade, it could be a really interesting plot beat in an upcoming JSA ongoing. Like, I want to see them tackle that. I want to see how they handle that. So, it's got me interested. But you know what? Rest in peace, Earth 2. You deserve a lot better. And that's just me. Overall, one thumb up, one thumb middle. And lastly, we have Immortal Hulk number 34. This was such a great return for this series. After the giant revelation at the end of the previous issue and arc, maybe the time away helped land the impact of this reassessment issue harder than it would have otherwise. Similarly to the Immortal Hulk prologue or the 48 issue, this one takes us through the history of the Hulk canon through the eyes of madness, and it's a beautiful madness. Ewing breathes such a hilariously narcissistic and apathetic life into the leader, and how he wrangles his way through failure after failure, all the while never really understanding or learning why he keeps messing things up. It's what makes the issue an interesting dissection of the character and their ethos, tangling themselves into the conflict in ways that can only lead to even worse outcomes. I love it. It brings the leader up to date to where Immortal Hulk is tonally and thematically, and gets me excited for what it has to do. And on a flip side, it's clear how much Ewing is channeling himself through the leader, because the leader is taking all the variables into account. He's making all these plans, and he's looking over and surveying the entirety of the whole canon from his own perspective, from his outside perspective, and seeing how he can fit into there and how he can use that. There's one thing where we catch up to where the Immortal Hulk was in the Hulk in Hell arc, and if you didn't know, the Hulk in Hell arc was meant to be the grand finale for the Immortal Hulk if the series wasn't a success. Like, that was going to be the kind of bailout parachute moment for Ewing. But when we finally get to that moment, to the end, the Hulk in Hell arc, you can see David Banner or Brian Banner keep using both interchangeably, giving up, like saying, this is over, I'm done, I failed, and the leader comes in and says, nope, we're going the distance, basically. And I feel like that's Ewing himself saying that this series was a runaway success, and it's going to allow me to get to the end game, and that's what the leader is doing. So I thought that was pretty funny, and it does give me really a lot of hope for where the next 16 issues of this series is going to go. So fingers crossed that it can use those well and supercharge them, because I am just so invested in this series right now, and I love where it's going. Overall, 2 thumbs up. And finally, we have what I watched this week, which is one episode of Stargirl, episode 6, The Just Society. And this was a pretty weak episode, especially compared to the last couple. This one is a bit too wrapped up in some weak and honestly kind of irritating melodrama and stretched out conflict between the team members. There's some really good stuff in there, especially in how Mike and Barbara, Courtney's mom, bond and start to feel more like mother and son, something that John's never really touched with the characters in the comics. And despite how aggravating I find Mike as a character in the show, it still managed to be really cute and heartwarming. Other than that, the team as it stands right now more or less swapped around the entire episode until the third act climax, which is actually really good, but mostly because of how over the top and straight Sportsmaster and Tigress are played. The former in particular just gives it his all, whooping and hollering in his evil-looking umpire gear. Sure, he's just kind of throwing around really obviously CGI baseballs, but the actor has such a physicality and such enthusiasm in the costume that it's hard to look away. It's so engrossing and so fun to watch. It feels almost like from a different show. The fight between them and the team is fun, fluid, and surprisingly graceful at points. But that's kind of the only thing that really stands out in the episode. The rest could have been skipped or consolidated. I guess now that we're halfway through, things have to slow down so that they don't rush through the plot so quickly. But fingers crossed it balances out more in the coming weeks, because that would be such a drag after a stretch of episodes that had some really good pacing. So overall, 2 months middle. I'm still interested in the show. I did kind of forget that it was even on, so hopefully it gets me more hooked and invested, or else I might just kind of wait until the finale to even talk about it. Because as we know, Doom Patrol is coming up next week, and I can't wait to discuss it here. Anyway, that's it for this week. As always, I want to say thank you out there to anyone ever sent a question, comment, or topic to the show. It means so much to me, and I'm just so grateful for that. I promise to try and get some questions in. It's still been really hectic around here, and just thank you for listening in general. It means so much, and it really is humbling, and I'm just so grateful for that. And I want to give a shout out to the cover artist for the show at DOTEMCE. please check them out. They're amazing and they really deserve all the support you can give them. And like I said, Doom Patrol next week. I'm excited. I can't wait to see the next episodes, which actually premiere tomorrow, but I'm not going to be able to talk about it because I only record weekly. And then we can kick off the second season that is worthy of the first. Anyway, thank you for listening. Have a great weekend and see you again next time.